right, so let's now turn our attention to the other senses, if you will. One of the things, the interesting thing about touch is, and it connects with when we talk about pain as well here, and both of these are part of this entire process. But our sense of touch actually is 4 different senses. And when you think about it, it makes sense, but we don't really kind of do that calculation. So we've got pressure. When I just run like a cat's whisker over your face, versus pressing in with your finger on your face, is all part of pressure, and that's part of what we would just generally refer to as touch. Warmth and cold. Warmth, cold, and then pain. So we actually have 4 dimensions, if you will, that are all very much a part of what we refer to as the sense of touch. And so when somebody says, "Why are you touching me?" or they discern that touch, then it's one of these. You know, we may feel the warmth and the pressure versus the cold, and grabbing somebody's hand, for example. So when we say that something is hot, for example, it's more than just it's straight warmth. And then you get into the whole physics of it with hot and the absence of cold and those sorts of things. But touch sensations involve more than just tactile stimulation. A self-produced tickle produces less somatosensory cortex activation than does the same tickle from someone else. And we ever wonder, you know, for example, why can't I tickle myself? And a lot of that has to do with the differential nature of touch itself. What you see here in this diagram is when you step on something that hurts, a piece of glass, or in this case a straight pin. The pain impulses go into the brain and send back, remember the reflex arc that we talked about, that doesn't go to the brain directly, because it preserves the limb from its the danger represented. But then it projects onto the brain in terms of pain itself, and that's the other issue when we're talking about touch, is that if someone were to say to you, "It's all in your head," actually they are quite right. And I would refer you, if you've ever read anything about pain, you will find that this element is absolutely correct. We have sensors that process all of these elements that are part of what we refer to pain. Paul Brand, and I'll just put his name up here if you want an interesting read. He spent his life as a physician, his career as a physician studying pain. And he wrote a book called The Gift Nobody Wants, which is really quite true, because we complain about pain, and the reality is that we really couldn't function very well without pain. As a matter of fact, leprosy, a lot of times people see leprosy as a skin condition, when in fact it actually is a condition of pain receptors. Now, we don't have specific pain receptors because all of these combinations are part of touch. But it is not a skin condition. It's actually a affliction that turns off the pain receptors. There's a story, I think, in your book of a little girl who was afflicted with this particular disorder, and she began to suck on her fingers, and before long she started chewing on her fingers, and before too long she had gnawed a hole in her finger because she didn't feel it, and of registering pain. And what we have begun to realize is that we actually have a gate, if you will, at the base of our brain. It has led to a theory referred to as the gate control theory that basically says that we can only process so much pain at a time. And the gate allows these pain signals to travel up to the brain, and the large fibers in the spinal cord close this gate to prevent their passage. So having this information in hand, and I'll give you a classic example. Dr. Brand had low back pain, and he used to work at a leprosarium, which is a little bit like a sanatorium, but a leprosarium is for people that suffer from leprosy. And they had paths around the leprosarium that instead of gravel, they had crushed shells as the base of it. And he would walk around on that in his bare feet, because he knew that if he flooded this gate, that he would find some relief, because the brain could not process all of the information coming from his feet in enough time to be able to manage the pain signal. And so he would get some relief. Did the pain stop? No, but he had flooded the gate that is around, that manages the pain itself. The other thing to keep in mind when we're talking about pain itself is go back to the biopsychosocial aspect of it. And the pain has a specific psychosocial component to it. And that's why when a kid falls, if you're witness to it and he isn't aware that you're watching him, he may not cry. But he goes running home, bursts in the door, and what does he do first? Cries really loud because of how he hurt himself. Well, that points out we register pain psychologically. When you go in and the pain doc says, rate your pain for me, 0 to 10, everybody's pain scale is very different. I lived with head pain, not a headache, but head pain for many years, 3 or 4 years. And I got fairly accustomed to the level of pain that I had to live with, which I still do, by the way. Essentially, when I was working with a pain doctor, he finally got to the point where the only way that they could control the pain in my head would be to flood that gate with other stimulation, which is electrical stimulation. I'm one of the few people you probably will meet who has a neurostimulators in my head that will scramble, in a sense, flood this pain gate, so that I don't feel as much pain, which I don't. I generally live at a 2 or 3 in terms of pain in my head. When that when I turn it off, or the battery charge for the battery that runs these stimulators goes down, then my pain goes back up. There's another component here to keep in mind, and that's the social component of pain, which I referred to already in terms of the little boy. But what's interesting is that even in different cultures, so sociocultural, they have a different view about pain. You go to some of the cultures in the African cultures, and they have a rites of passage where they will basically cut the young man who is going to be named a man, a boy. They will cut his forehead 5 times, and if he flinches, he's in a sense kicked out. He is in a shame state in that particular culture, and so they enculturate the individual to. It's not that they don't feel pain, but to manage pain and register it in a different way. And you see that within cultures and the variety of ways with which they see it. Interestingly enough, in Western Christianity, a lot of times you will hear the statement made that when we pray, we ask God to remove our adversity / pain. And in other cultures, they pray that God will just simply give them the endurance and the ability to withstand the adversity. And so their view of pain is very different than ours. They see it as a normal part of life. We see it as an abnormal condition, and that impacts really how we understand it altogether.